Hello there, and welcome to the Bearded Peacock. It's my channel where we talk all things Leeds United. I'm, of course, George. Welcome along to the channel, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Should I say I haven't been on for a couple of weeks. I mean, there hasn't been a game, has there? Hasn't really been much to talk about either. But we're back again, and yeah, everybody, let me know how much you're looking forward to Leeds United actually playing a game of football. I know it sounds ludicrous, doesn't it? But we play again next Sunday on the 2nd of October against Aston Villa at Ellen Road. Let me know what you're thinking behind this one. Obviously, we've had a long break. But, let me know in the comments what you're thinking and how you've passed the time in between, this month in between us playing a game of football. But anyway, enough waffling on from me and enough chatter about nothing. We're going to talk about the Amazon Prime documentary that came out last night, Academy Dreams, which follows the trials and tribulations of the Academy team, Leeds United Academy team, through the 21-22 season. And it's sort of correlation with the first team as well. There's a few key areas, key things that went on, that I'd like to just address, looking at a few of the players, it interviews some of the players, Greenwood, Gelhardt, Somerville, Amari Miller, Noah Kenner, Leo Helday. There's quite a few, Lewis Bate, Sean McGurk. There's a few, Charlie Cresswell, of course, the captain of the under-23 side. There's a few that obviously get the time in front of the camera. There's a few obviously that must have not wanted to, but there's quite a few of them. Lengthy interviews really with a lot of them. And, it's that sort of that I want to get into really in sort of what they said in terms of, because we all know how it played out. Obviously, the Academy got relegated and there's some exciting players in the Leeds United Academy, as we all know. One of them, obviously, is Joe Gelhardt. Now, Sean McGurk, who's another forward, a little way off the first team. He seems to be, but in the documentary, obviously, Joffrey goes back home, shows us round where he used to play football. His mum has a word on him, how he played football as a young lad, doing keepy-ups as 18-month-year-old, this sort of thing. And one of his family friends is there saying about, he played football there, and the goals have been there for ages, and this, that, and the other. And Joffrey's there telling us all about when he played football. He goes into his loft in his house and digs out some of his trophies. Said when he was playing for Wigan, that Leeds United came in for him to come into the summer, into Leeds in the summer. Obviously, Wigan got relegated the season that we bought him. But yeah, Sean McGurk was speaking about Joffrey. He says, while he was at Wigan with him from the age of 13, he says, you watch someone, he's got a real good chance. He recalled a game that Wigan were down 4-0 and Joffrey came on, scored 5 goals. The way he's built, he said, the way he plays, everything to do with him. He's a Scouser as well. He says he reminds him of Wayne Rooney, and that he said he can go on and go to the very top. Obviously, Gelhardt is very, very well thought of in the Leeds United Academy, and obviously Jesse Marsh speaks at the end. Obviously, Marsh comes in and he speaks on Gelhardt, and he says. He said that we always knew that he had a brilliant talent, and it was just about keeping him fit and strong. We know he has a future, and it's really big. So, yeah, they like Joffrey, don't they, obviously? And he speaks regularly, does Gelhardt, in this series, most notably about his time when he came on against Wolves at Ellen Road. He says, I came on, thousands were there, obviously, and it was dead loud. He said, I couldn't believe it. I got up and I was like, did that really just happen? He was speaking about the penalty incident, of course. He said it was only really sunk in for him when he got into his bed at that night, and he went on to say what a dream it was for him to play in the Premier League as a kid, and he's done that now. And he went on to say to do that for a club like Leeds, that is unbelievable. Obviously, there's a few more players. It charts the season. They go up and down. Obviously, we all know it. A lot of the players came in to the team, to the first team, so the under-23s dipped a little bit. There's Amari Miller talking a lot about, he gets a red card in one of the games against Blackburn. Talks about how he let his team down. The team came around him quickly and sort of forgave him for that error. And he speaks about, adapting to coming from Birmingham and living, alone and everything. Obviously, Helday joins at the beginning of the season as well. Obviously, Miller's a new player as well, as is Sean McGurk. And Helday's living in the same sort of apartment block as Miller. It shows them playing a bit of FIFA, and Miller's telling Helday about, the situation and everything like that. Interesting to see how the academy guys get on and live their lives, as well as obviously on the football pitch. There's a few bits like that. Obviously, Gelhardt talks about his upbringing. There's also a piece in one of the episodes on Sam Greenwood, who of course goes back to Seaham, where he's from, Sunderland area. And he takes us around where he used to live and where his first memories of football came along. And playing in a sort of ball cage with one of his friends, that 50-50 game. Of course, I'm sure a lot of people will know that. But what really struck me of these players is the young players, very, very young players, not even first team players, and the being touted as some kind of brilliant player as first team players. The amount of care and sort of that the Leeds United club put into the young players is quite unbelievable, really. These guys are almost like first team players, aren't they? With the cars they're driving, the exposure that they're getting is unreal, really, and it feeds some real high egos, which you can tell there are some in that Leeds United academy side, and I think that's quite sad, really, because they're not, they've done nothing so far in their careers, and they're almost, this sort of documentary has given them the opportunity to speak as if they're seasoned pros and that kind of thing, taking us around where they used to live. Well, they're not that old, really, are they? I don't know, it just frustrated me a little bit. There's also there's a bit, obviously, where you just think, like I said, the young lads, these guys, and it's just, it's incredible. Like I said, the amount of, money and everything that they have at such a young age. It's quite astonishing, really, to be honest with you. And these are sort of 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds up to 20-year-old, and like I said, it's incredible, really, and not very good in my eyes, really. These players haven't made it. You're giving players way too much money when they've barely done anything in the game. And where's, for a lot of them, where does the motivation come from to then go higher up the ladder when you're starting at 18, 19, 17, 18, 19. You're getting a great pay packet. You're quite comfortable there at Leeds United. Where's the ambition to then go and break into the first team? Obviously, that, having said that, the lads seem to have the ambition to do that. But I just found it a little bit funny. And also, what I was going to say as well is the point that the whole point of the academy is to get these players into the first team. It doesn't really matter about, about the results almost. I know they want to win, you want to breed confidence, you want to breed that winning mentality, but for me, it doesn't matter about the results. And the big deal is to get these players into the first team, yeah? And there wasn't that much, what I thought about this documentary here, there wasn't that much sort of exposure and airtime given to the players that actually went into the first team. I mean, I know I said about Joffrey playing against Wolves there, he spoke about that one. He also spoke about that Norwich goal. But, I think Crescencio had already made his debut at that point, and it just kind of skirts over that. He was, I don't know if he was maybe even the first one to make his debut at Newcastle, wasn't he, in September of last year? And it doesn't even mention that, and he doesn't seem to get the same sort of airtime as Gelhardt, and Gelhardt's this kind of poster boy for it, I guess. But yeah, it just seemed a bit odd that, the whole point is sort of the building up to the first team. And, Charlie Cresswell again gets his chance against West Ham, doesn't he? And again, it's it's sort of just skirted over very quickly, and that's, to me, I know they're trying to chart the sort of the season of the academy and the build up to the first team, but these guys had got into the first team, and it just seemed odd to me that there was only a few minutes. Charlie Cresswell obviously spoke about his debut against West Ham. Obviously, some of them had played at Fulham in the Cup before then, but again, it just didn't seem quite right to me that the whole point of the academy is to get these players into the first team, and in the way that they kind of did, a lot of them did. It's just not really seen as a big deal when that's probably the whole point of the thing, to get them into the first team, isn't it? And there's loads of them, like I said, that got into the first team. But yeah, this, Cresswell speaks a little bit about West Ham. He spoke about what Cooper said to him, didn't he? Don't fight him, he said to him in the game, just let him have the ball kind of thing. About Mikel Antonio, obviously Antonio ended up getting the last minute winner in that game, but he spoke how proud he was to wear the Leeds United shirt, and he seems to come across really well, and obviously really wants to play for Leeds. At the very end, obviously he does speak about going on loan to Millwall, but he talks about the Leeds United Academy. He said it gives you a platform so you can take that into everyday life. You might not be at Leeds United, you might go on to achieve great things with Leeds United, or you might not. It might be at somewhere else. It might be at another club, he said, but my dream is to play for Leeds United. So, you can tell, and there's a little bit with Richard Cresswell, which again, I thought, he played for Leeds. He literally played for Leeds, did Richard Cresswell. And there was no talk at all about, you thought maybe might be an issue, his dad giving him advice on Leeds and how to play. I'm sure he does. But, maybe as fans, you'd like to see that. This lad is a son of one of our former players, albeit I know he didn't play that long for Leeds. But, you might have thought maybe you can have a shot, a little segment, instead of him playing golf with him in somewhere and just speaking out about FIFA, attributes. Have him speak about Leeds and, what it's like to play for Leeds, and perhaps a little segment on how he played for Leeds and what his thoughts and feelings were about playing for Leeds, speaking to his son. That would have been more relevant to me to see, as a Leeds United fan, to watch that, to know obviously that his dad played for Leeds as well. And so it very just skirted very quickly over. There were obviously some big points that were made. No other than obviously when Marcelo Bielsa gets the sack in February and Jesse Marsch comes in. Obviously, Somerville, we know, had a little bit of a thing with Bielsa, and he speaks on that in this documentary. He said it came as a shock for everybody. That's what he said. Cresswell said some players could go there to Thorpe Arch to see him because we didn't know whether we'd see him again. We all had a big meeting. It was a very difficult time for us as a club. Somerville said, he was grateful for the opportunity he gave him. Lewis Bate had a word on it. He taught me loads in the months that he'd been at Leeds. I think about football differently now, he said. But also, if we, go back into January, obviously, again, Crescencio, he had a little bit of a, he wanted to go out on loan, didn't he? And Bielsa kind of had a little bit of a issue with it. He almost said he had a sort of an argument with Bielsa before sort of saying conversation, but he did almost say argument. So him on the loan move, or the loan move that didn't happen, he said, I'm seeing my teammates going into the first team, and you think we can do it. The future is bright. Anything is possible. I wanted to play more first team football. We had, and that's where he said, you could see him saying an argument, but then he went into conversation. I wanted to leave on a 6-month loan. I spoke with him a lot about my behaviour off the pitch as well. You have to be patient, he said, but he said, that's a little bit hard for a young lad, he said. But Crescencio obviously scored a lot of goals. It shows him score a hat-trick against Crystal Palace. And there was plenty of time where they did obviously come up and play at Ellen Road. Obviously, the fans came. Let me know in the comments, did you go to any academy games last season? Oh, they won this season. There was one last week, wasn't there, against Southampton, where the lads won 6-2. Obviously, then it charts into January. Obviously, there's a January arrival of Mateo Joseph, and they have a little segment on him. And he couldn't believe it, how much in depth they went into the club. Sort of, I guess, Orta and his staff had gone into sort of getting him and looking at how he played football. He said they knew me better than my family. There was a PowerPoint about me and what I did on the pitch. And then he went on to say the fans talk to you on the streets, and he said that's fine. He kind of likes that. It's a small, familiar place, he said about Leeds. I want to play in the first team. And then he went on to talk about his debut for the academy, and they played Blackburn. I think Blackburn's academy got beaten 4-0, I think, and he came on for his debut. He said it was a difficult night. That game gave me a lesson, and obviously it's a lesson that he's, taken very much into account, as he's obviously doing pretty well this season, albeit in a lower division. Obviously, like I said, they did get relegated in the end, and that's what we see in this documentary. Obviously, the manager, Mark Jackson, he gets promoted as Jesse Marsh comes into the first team picture, obviously, and Marsh himself had something to say on these young players. I think that these young players have to play a big part in what we do going forward in the short term and in the long term. The few of the academy lads also were on camera speaking about the effect of the new manager. Leo Helde said it's a new style of football that we have to get used to. Lots of pressing, but also he brings a lot of things that Bielsa like to do as well. Noah Kenner said a new manager comes in and everybody wants to impress. You want to show your good side. Somerville also said Jesse is coming up. He said of Jesse what he likes to do. Jesse is coming up to the young lads by himself and talking, saying what he wants from you, what you have to do to get into the first team. I think that is the difference. So obviously Jesse we know he's a little bit more of a man manager than perhaps Bielsa was, who obviously liked to keep his distance. But obviously it just shows you that the young lads obviously have a big part to play and are very much involved in the first team football as it goes on. I mean, Charlie Cresswell said of Mark Jackson's step up to the first team coaching role. We heard that Jacko was said going up to the first team, and as an under-23 player, we were buzzing because we knew Jacko and we could go and speak to him about that. He spoke of, there was a guy there that all of them knew that maybe gave them a little bit of a hand in getting into the first team. And also, Adam Taylor takes charge of the under-23 teams, and he said, I think any role of an academy coach is also to be a mentor to these players. I have had a lot of the same experiences. Obviously, he broke through an academy team into the Premier League. I think he played for, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in the comments, but I think he played for Blackburn and Wigan, perhaps. Looked a very familiar man. I hadn't seen much of him actually before I watched this. But yeah, obviously he takes charge of the remaining fixtures. Um, But obviously, the season's coming to close. Leeds United Academy, they get relegated. But at this point, I think the sort of attention of the sort of documentary has almost switched to the first team anyway. The game at Brentford, of course, it shows us, staying up last season. Celebrations in the dressing room. They're all, voiceovers over the top of it all. And there's a few of the academy lads talking. Cresswell says I think he said he's got 5 Premier League appearances, and if you'd have given him that at the start of the season, he'd have snapped your hand off, for it. Gelhardt says he thinks he thought he'd come on 15 times. So I'm made up with that. He said it was a dream since he was a kid to play in the Premier League. So obviously it's a message that he's given the whole way through this 6-part documentary. Then you've got Jesse Marsh speaking on each of the 3 new players that have signed new contracts. Obviously, Crysencio Somerville, Sam Greenwood, and Joe Gelhardt, who obviously the club think very, very highly of. Marsh has his say on each of them. On Greenwood, he said Sam Greenwood for me is probably the player that has adapted the best. He has some natural gifts when he gets onto the football. Greenwood himself said, I want to keep pushing and keep getting more first team minutes and make an impact when in games where it is needed. And he said ultimately the goal is to start every week for Leeds United. On Somerville, Marsh said, I think he's he's grown enormously in the short time I've been here. Somerville on the new contract and things said, Jesse said to me he wants to use me more and that I can be very useful in his system, so I'm looking forward to next year. And finally, like I said, I've already said what Marsh said, of course, on Gelhardt, but Gelhardt on the future and obviously everything like that. He said, I want to develop under the new manager and learn his new methods, which will, ultimately let him have more first team minutes. And obviously it then had a little section on Noah Kenner, who has obviously decided to join Hibs at the end of his contract running out. He'd been at Leeds for 8 years. He said how much of an influence Jackson had on his Leeds United career. Jacko has been a massive influence on me, and he has been a massive part of me at Leeds. So he seemed obviously quite upset, obviously, which he would be, having been there for 8 years and have quite a young player. There was a short section on him as well, quite an interesting upbringing, isn't he, and everything like that. Good luck to Kenner at Hibs. I know he's been playing a little bit, hasn't he? So hopefully he'll find his feet in Scotland and have make a good career. But that's what the academy brings, isn't it? You might not, and what Cresswell has said earlier on, obviously in the documentary itself. You might not make it at Leeds, basically, but it might set you up for a career anywhere that you go. And there's a big message of that all the way through the documentary, really. And Cresswell himself had to say, obviously, he's gone to Millwall. So he was speaking about that, saying, like I said, it is his dream to play for Leeds. You can tell he really loves Leeds United and would like, obviously nothing more than to play for Leeds. I think he will come back next season, and probably some people might not like this, but I think he'll replace Liam Cooper in the first team, and then I think eventually he will be captain at Leeds. I think he's only 20 or maybe 21, something like that. Still a young player, but from this you can tell he's a leader of that team. He's a leader on the pitch. He's a leader in the dressing room as well. One of the lads, who I think it was Joffrey, was saying that even the rubbish on the floor in the dressing room, Charlie Cresswell is on at the lads, saying, make it tidy, pick all your rubbish up and things like that. He's obviously a leader, is Cresswell, and we all look forward to having him back next season. I'm sure he'll play a big part, but he needed to get first team football, didn't he? And looks like he's done that very well so far at Millwall, hasn't he? But overall, it's interesting this to look at the academy players and everything like that. But I think, ultimately it's kind of like a good idea, but I think like I said before, I just think it's giving these young players far too much of a sort of an ego trip, really. When they've really not done anything really, to merit it. And I think it's sad, really, as society that you know, people put so much pressure and everything on these players where they've got it all and they look to have it all, everything done for them, fancy cars, everything like that, and really these are average, young players. Really, it's not even elite level, is it, at the moment? Anyway, so I find it quite sad in a sense, but it is interesting to to see uh, you know that side of it as a fan. But and as well, I cannot see this really travelling very far past the Leeds United fan base because, for me, if you're not a fan of the club, why would you want to really spend all that time looking and seeing how an academy that you're not even that bothered about is working? I personally can't see this doing very well. But let me know if you watched it in the comments and what you think. Do you share my opinion of it being a little bit of a ego trip for these young lads, or do you think it's quite a good idea, and set them up for something quite special in the future for a first team football club? Let me know in the comments. And, congratulations to you if you've made it through to the end of this video because I've gone on for ages here. But I wanted to break it down. Obviously, I haven't been on for a while as well. So, yeah, obviously, I'll be back now. The football's back. So I'll be back. Leeds United are back. The football's always been on. Um, yeah, I'll be back with a preview of the Villa game, and from here on out till the World Cup, we'll be previewing and reviewing each of the Leeds United games. But thank you very much for listening here because, like I said, it's been an incredibly long one. Marching on together. I'll see you on the next one.